The baby's tiny cries pierced through the mansion, echoing down its cold marble halls, when the unimaginable sight unfolded before Adrian's eyes. His pulse thundered in his chest as he froze outside the nursery, the door ajar just enough for him to see what no father should ever have to witness. Mariah, the new maid he had reluctantly hired, bent over his infant daughter Lily, and with trembling hands tied a soft cloth gently around the baby's tiny wrists. For a split second, Adrian's vision blurred with rage. His breath caught, and every muscle in his body screamed to rush in and rip his daughter away. But something about the maid's face stopped him cold. Her eyes weren't cruel. They were broken, and her whisper cracked the silence in a way that made his world tilt. "You remind me so much of her. I can't lose you too." He stepped back, hidden in the shadows of the hall, his mind spinning. All night those words echoed in his skull. Who was she talking about? Why would she tie Lily at all? She hadn't hurt her. Not exactly, but the image was burned into his memory. The billionaire who had faced cutthroat boardrooms, ruthless rivals, and billion-dollar deals suddenly felt powerless in his own home. He paced his study, clutching a glass he never drank, asking himself the same question again and again: who really was Mariah? Adrian had not wanted her in his house to begin with. After his wife's death, he had gone through nanny after nanny, each one fleeing within weeks. Lily's constant crying, her fragile health, and the sheer weight of being the daughter of a man who could never spare enough time had made the job unbearable for most. But Mariah had been different. She appeared desperate for work, accepting a modest salary in exchange for long hours. She rarely smiled, avoided unnecessary conversation, and carried herself like a woman carrying a storm inside her. Adrian had thought little of it, until now. The next morning, he studied her more carefully as she moved about the kitchen. Her hair tied back, her hands steady as she prepared Lily's formula, her face revealed nothing of last night's moment. When Lily cried, Mariah's expression softened as she held the baby close, humming an unfamiliar melody in a language Adrian didn't recognize. It was haunting, full of sorrow. He wanted to confront her immediately, demand to know what she had done, but the memory of her whisper gnawed at him. If he accused her too harshly, she might run. And for reasons he didn't yet understand, he couldn't let her leave just yet. Later that day, he finally tested her. "I heard Lily crying yesterday. What did you do to calm her?" His tone was sharp, but his eyes searched hers for cracks. Mariah's hands trembled for only a second before she forced a smile. "Swaddling," she replied softly. "Some babies feel safe that way, like they're back in the womb." Adrian studied her closely. The explanation made sense on the surface. But something about her voice, the evasive way her eyes darted away, betrayed her. She was hiding something. The unease wouldn't leave him, so Adrian did what men like him always did when doubt consumed them. He took control. That evening, while Mariah prepared Lily's bath, he quietly installed hidden cameras in the nursery. If she was hiding something, he would know. That night, once Lily was asleep, Adrian sat alone in his office, watching the footage. Hours passed before anything unusual appeared. At 2 a.m, Lily woke crying, and Mariah slipped quietly into the room. She didn't turn on the lights. She didn't rush for the bottle. Instead, she scooped Lily up into her arms, tears streaming down her cheeks. "My sweet girl," she whispered, rocking her gently. "Mommy's here. Don't cry. Mommy's here." Adrian's chest tightened. "Mommy." The words sliced through him like glass. It wasn't a mistake. Mariah was speaking to his daughter as if she were her own child. He leaned closer to the screen, his knuckles white around the edge of the desk. Who had she lost? What pain was she hiding so deep that she would pour it into his daughter? His anger had begun to fade, replaced by something far more dangerous: curiosity. The following day, he couldn't contain it anymore. He cornered her in the hallway. "Why did you call my daughter yours?" His voice was low, but his eyes burned with accusation. Mariah froze, her face pale. Tears welled instantly, but she shook her head. "Please, I can't explain. Not yet." Adrian's fury should have ignited then, but instead, What surged in his chest was something unfamiliar. A protective instinct, not just for Lily but strangely for Mariah as well. There was no malice in her. Only grief. He found himself retreating, shaken by emotions he couldn't name. Days passed, and the house grew heavier with silence. Adrian found himself watching her more than he wanted to admit. She was tireless with Lily, tender in ways no hired help had ever been. She laughed softly when Lily giggled, wiped away every tear, and often held the baby long after she'd fallen asleep, her lips pressed to her tiny forehead as though unwilling to let go. And yet, when Adrian caught her eyes, he saw a depth of sorrow he couldn't ignore. He tried to tell himself it didn't matter. She was an employee. She would leave eventually. But then the unthinkable happened. One night, Lily's cries weren't like the others. They weren't the restless whimpers of a child. They were sharp, broken, and filled with pain. Adrian rushed into the nursery, his heart slamming against his ribs. Lily's skin burned with fever, her breath shallow, her tiny chest heaving as if every breath were a battle. He froze, panic flooding his veins. For the first time, the man who could negotiate empires didn't know what to do for his own child. He fumbled for his phone, stammering for the doctor. Mariah burst into the room, her face stricken with fear, but her hands steady. She scooped Lily into her arms without hesitation, rocking her gently, whispering through her tears. "Stay with me, sweetheart, stay with me." She worked quickly, sponging Lily's forehead, checking her pulse, preparing remedies Adrian didn't even know they had in the house. She moved with the precision of a woman who had done this before, every motion fueled by desperation. Adrian stood frozen, watching her cradle his daughter like her life depended on it. And in that moment, realization crashed over him. She wasn't simply caring for Lily. She was reliving something, pouring her soul into saving this child because once before, she had failed to save another. By dawn, Lily's fever broke. She slept peacefully in Mariah's arms, her tiny breaths steady once more. Adrian's heart twisted as he watched them, as though they were not maid and master's daughter, but mother and child. He whispered into the quiet morning, his voice shaking. "Who are you really, Mariah? And what are you hiding from me?" And in that unanswered question, the mansion fell into silence, carrying with it the weight of secrets still locked in the shadows. The morning sun slipped into the mansion as though nothing had happened, but Adrian could not shake the images from the night before. His daughter's fragile body trembling in fever, the maid's tears falling like rain as she fought to keep her alive, and the way she whispered to Lily as though she were saving her own flesh and blood. He had witnessed something deeper than duty, something far beyond the boundaries of employer and servant. Now he needed the truth. Mariah appeared in the kitchen, her face pale from sleeplessness, her arms trembling as she still clutched Lily protectively. Adrian studied her for a long time before speaking. His voice carried neither anger nor accusation, only the weight of questions he could no longer bury. "Why do you love her like this? Why do you look at her as if she were yours?" His words cut the silence, forcing Mariah to stop hiding. For the first time, she lifted her gaze and let the tears fall freely. With a trembling voice, she began to unravel the pain she had carried alone. She spoke of her past, a life stripped bare by tragedy. Years before, she had given birth to a daughter, tiny and delicate like Lily. She had been her entire world, the only light in a life of shadows. But fate was cruel. Poverty left her powerless when her child fell ill, and no doctors came in time. Her baby had slipped away in her arms, leaving Mariah shattered, a mother without a child. The act of tying Lily's tiny hands had not been cruelty, but a habit from her culture, where swaddling was a way to calm restless infants. In her grief, she had seen her lost daughter's reflection in Lily's face and could not stop herself from whispering words meant for the child she had buried. Adrian listened, his chest tightening with every word. This was not the story of a dangerous woman, but of a mother still mourning, a woman carrying grief like chains around her heart. The rage that had once filled him dissolved into something softer, something frightening to a man who had locked his emotions away for so long. He saw her not as a maid, but as a woman who had suffered and yet still had the strength to give love. He felt a connection forming, fragile yet undeniable. In the days that followed, the house changed. Mariah no longer tried to hide her tenderness toward Lily, and Adrian no longer pretended not to notice. Late nights turned into quiet conversations by the fire after Lily had fallen asleep, where Adrian, for the first time in years, shared pieces of his own loneliness. The death of his wife had left him cold, focused only on work, burying himself in wealth that could never fill the emptiness inside. With Mariah, words slipped out that he had never spoken aloud. And in her, he saw not just a caretaker for his child but a kindred soul who carried wounds as deep as his own. But just as a fragile peace began to blossom, the past came knocking on their door. One evening, as Mariah stepped out to fetch supplies, a man appeared at the gates of the mansion. His voice was sharp, his smile cruel, and his presence sent chills down Mariah's spine. He knew her. He knew the life she had tried to leave behind. With venom in his tone, he reminded her of debts unpaid, mistakes made in desperation after losing her child. He threatened to expose her, to shatter the fragile trust she had built in this house. Adrian overheard fragments of their conversation, and suspicion flared once more in his chest. Could it be that she was not just a grieving mother but also a woman hiding darker secrets? He watched her crumble under the man's words, her body trembling with fear, and part of him wanted to confront her immediately. Yet another part of him, the part that had begun to feel something more than curiosity for her, held him back. He needed to know the full truth before he made a choice. The following days were filled with tension. Mariah avoided his eyes, her laughter with Lily dimmed by the weight of fear. Adrian battled within himself, torn between distrust and the memory of her tears as she saved his daughter's life. His empire had taught him to cut off anyone who carried risk, to protect his assets at all costs. But this was not about money. This was about his daughter, and perhaps about his heart. The decision before him was one he had never faced in business, whether to protect himself or to trust the woman fate had placed under his roof. The man from her past returned, this time more forceful. He cornered Mariah, demanding money she did not have, threatening that Adrian would throw her out once he learned the truth. But Adrian was not far, and when he stepped into the confrontation, the air shifted instantly. His voice was steel, his presence overwhelming. If she is in this house, she is under my protection. Whatever you want from her, you'll answer to me first. The man faltered, his confidence cracking in the face of Adrian's fury. It was the moment Mariah realized he was not just her employer. He was choosing her side. From that day, everything changed. Together they found a way to confront the blackmailer, using Adrian's resources and Mariah's courage to dismantle the lies that held her captive. Her past no longer loomed as a curse, but as a battle she had survived. Adrian's respect for her deepened, not only because of her love for Lily, but because of her strength to face the shadows that once defined her. As the mansion settled into peace again, Adrian saw her in a new light. He no longer questioned why she looked at Lily with such fierce devotion. He understood. She was not trying to replace the child she lost. She was learning to heal by giving her heart once more. And in doing so, she had given Lily more love than he could ever have hoped for. One evening, as the house lay wrapped in silence, Mariah kissed Lily's forehead, whispering softly, "This time, I won't lose you." Adrian stood in the doorway, watching the scene unfold not as an outsider, but as a man who knew he was no longer alone. He had started by mistrusting her, by seeing her as a mystery to unravel. But in the end, what he found was not suspicion, it was love. The story of the Maid and the Billionaire did not end in scandal or betrayal, but in the quiet realization that sometimes the most unexpected people walk into your life, not to harm you, but to heal the parts you thought were beyond repair. And as Adrian looked at Mariah, holding his daughter with the tenderness of a mother and the courage of a survivor, he understood the truth. What had begun with fear had become the most unpredictable love story of his life.